Good morning, everyone. So very happy to have you with us. Welcome to the, what do we call this? This is the LandPRO Extra, I guess we call it. And this is an opportunity for us to get our valued sponsors, our dear sponsors, to spend a few minutes and just either teach you something or explain you something to you about their line of business. Not necessarily a pitch, that's not what we're here for, but we're here to extend the learning that comes out of LandPRO. And so today we have four of our sponsors. We have Zeifmans, we have Teranet, Geo Warehouse, we have the folks from Vaughan, and we also have us, the BoundaryWise Academy. And I've been through all the presentations. They're fantastic. I think you'll learn a lot from them, and I'm really happy to get going with it. As Jess has just said, my colleague Jessica, who, by the way, single-handedly put on LandPRO this year. I'm astonished at the work she did. So if there's anyone you have to thank for what an incredible event we had put on, it's Jessica Sparks. My goodness, well done, Jess, thanks. But as she said in the chat here, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat window. We'll be monitoring. Here's how the format's going to go. We're going to start off with a 15 to 20 minute pre-recorded presentation from Zeifmans. And then we have Ahmad with us, who's one of the senior partners, and he'll be available to answer any questions. So drop your questions in the chat, and we'll deal with those questions at the end of the pre-recorded presentation. Then we'll go into Teranet. Same thing with Teranet. And from Teranet, we have John Singh and Teresa Corindia, who are with us, who know GeoWarehouse inside.
I'll go to the mailbox, so if I'm not here, you can get them.
Hang on a second, quick mute there, and then they will answer questions at the end of that. Then we'll do the same thing with the city of Vaughan. Then finally, we'll do the same thing with the BoundaryWise Academy. We should be wrapped up by 11 o'clock. Let's see if we can keep this on time. I tried very hard to keep the conference on time. You might have noticed. I hope it wasn't too rushed, but one of the things we've learned, which is an interesting thing, I do a lot of public speaking. I know a lot of you guys do as well, especially in your roles in real estate and so on. One of the things I realize is people who don't have a lot of experience in public speaking will stand up for a 30-minute segment and they'll completely blow their first 5 minutes by just getting comfortable. And then they get to the 30-minute mark and they haven't finished yet. So I hope it wasn't too rushed and that we managed it okay. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here. So bear with me while you see my eyes glancing at different screens here. I'm going to share my screen so we can begin our presentation of the Zeifmans presentation here. So here we go. I'm going to, here we go, share the screen. There we go. And let's hit play, and I'll see you guys in about 15 minutes, okay?
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, LandPRO team, for inviting us. And it was a great event. And it was really good to be back in person and interacting with all the business leaders, real estate professionals, and sharing and benefiting from their thoughts. Today, I have the opportunity to share some insight with respect to recent changes in the tax code, which might be affecting real estate sector. Before I get into that, I would like to introduce myself and Zeifmans a little bit. My name is Ahmed Aslam. I'm a partner with Zeifmans LLP, and I co-lead our firm's startup and technology practice. I also have a significant concentration of my clients in real estate and construction sector. I'm part of our firm's quality control team, and in that role, I oversee audit and assurance engagements for a significant portion of our construction and real estate clients. Now, a couple of things about Zeifmans. If you have not heard about us, we are one of the top 20 accounting firms by revenue in Canada, beyond the traditional offering from which you would expect from an accounting firm. We are also, we have a very robust business advisory, valuation, corporate turnaround, transaction advisory, and estate and succession planning services. We are helping over 10,000 clients through every step of their business life cycle. We are part of Nexia International, which is a network of accounting firms. This allows us the breadth and the reach in practically any part of the globe. Should you have a transaction involving a foreign entity, or you are interested in exploring some opportunities beyond Canada, we are happy to help you and leverage our extensive network. Now let's dive into our presentation today. Some of the last couple of years, government's focus have been mostly around COVID-related measures and trying to recover from this unprecedented challenge which we have experienced over the last couple of years. But during this time, real estate sector has always been in the spotlight. We all are aware. There is very significant appreciation in valuation around the sector over the last few years, particularly in GTA and in Ontario. So some of the government's measures have been focused around this. There have been a lot of discussion and talk around foreign buyers trying to enter into the Canadian real estate market and resulting speculation affecting the real estate prices. So some of the measures which government introduced in 2021, which are being implemented affecting 2022, that include a property vacancy tax for non-residents, non-Canadians. The legislation was recently introduced in December 2021. It passed the second reading in February 2022. And currently it's being considered in the committee. The Bill C8 imposes an annual tax of 1% on the value of the vacant or underused residential property owned by non-residents, non-Canadians, which essentially is a measure to ensure that if a non-resident, non-Canadian owns a property, it's being utilized. If it's sitting vacant, then those properties would be subject to this 1% tax. And the other thing to note is this tax is on an annual basis. We will talk about some other measures by other levels of the government, which are more one-time kind of levies, but this is an annual tax on the assessed value of the property. In order to implement this tax, the government is also requiring a non-resident, non-Canadian owner of Canadian real estate to file an annual return explaining the current use of the property. Comply with this will result in penalties, and this does impose that obligation on the owners to file that return on an annual basis by end of April of next year, along with the usual filing deadline of personal tax return. Now, there are certain exemptions available from this vacancy tax. The first exemption is if the property is owned by the owner or the spouse of the owner as their primary residence, that property will not be subject to tax. Similarly, if the property is owned by a child of the owner and the child is in Canada for an authorized study, then that property is again exempt from the tax. And lastly, some recreational properties are also exempt from this tax, but there are certain conditions attached. The recreational property need to be in a municipality with less than 30,000 residents, and it needs to be used on an annual basis by the owner for a period not less than 4 weeks in a given year. And with those exemptions in mind, the intention of the government is to make sure that residential properties are either being productively used or they will raise some revenue from those properties to reinvest into the real estate sector to make it a little bit more affordable for Canadians to get into the real estate sector. So that's about some other non-resident related real estate taxes. I mentioned that some other jurisdictions have also made that a priority to address this perceived imbalance and inability for new Canadians to get into the market. For example, Ontario had recently implemented a non-residential speculation tax. It's a 15% one-time tax, unlike the federal proposal, which is a 1% annual tax. This is a 15% one-time tax at the time when you buy the property. And also this tax in Ontario is focused on the greater Golden Horseshoe region, GTA, Peterborough, Niagara, the region, the Golden Horseshoe, any property in that region purchased by a non-resident is subject to this 15% tax. BC has a similar tax as well. BC tax is around 20%. And again, some exemptions are available for this tax as well. Namely, if the property is used by the owners, and even if you are a non-resident at the time you purchase a property, there may be a rebate available as long as you now are residing in Canada for at least a year. So there is an opportunity for you if you were subject to this tax originally, and the situations have changed, and now you are living in that property. You have the ability to go back and rebate and claim a rebate with respect to that tax. Let me just go back to that slide and also highlight that we are seeing similar proposals from different levels of government. We understand that there is a proposal in Toronto as well, aiming to do the same, taxing the property which is not being used, and that property is owned by a non-resident or the property is vacant. Similarly, Ottawa has introduced some measures around that as well. So it's something to keep an eye on. All of the various levels of governments are very concerned about this affordability issue with respect to Canadians being able to buy their first home. So in connection with that, there was another measure announced in the 2021 budget, which didn't get a lot of attention, but the budget is, that measure essentially is with respect to provide some transparency when a corporate entity moves to buy a real estate property. So the proposal is that there will be a publicly accessible corporate beneficial ownership registry, which will allow more transparency when a non-resident is buying a property through a corporate challenge. The government is aiming to put this registry in place by 2025. Now let's talk about some of the anticipated measure we expect the new 2022 federal budget may include. Again, we don't have an exact timeline of when this budget will be released, but we understand from some of the discussions from the pre-budget consultation and some of the pledges the government made during their previous election campaign, that there's going to be some of the proposals related to real estate included in that budget. I'm highlighting some of those here in today's presentation. The first one being government is proposing to double the first-time home buyer tax credit from $5,000 to $10,000. And second proposal government had introduced during their campaign was the first home saving account of up to $40,000. The aim for the first home saving account is to encourage Canadians to save some funds for the down payment of their first-time residential property. Any contribution in this account would be on tax-free basis. Any withdrawals from this account would also be on a tax-free basis. The money in the account will grow on tax-free as well. This can provide a much-needed source of funding for Canadians who are buying their first home. Some of the other measures, which we don't know what the final shape would be, but some of the proposals we have seen are with respect to curtailing or being able to help curb the significant appreciation in the real estate by limiting, for example, limiting your access to principal residence exemption in case when you don't own that property for more than a year. Just as a reminder, principal residence exemption is a fairly attractive exemption for Canadians that their own house where they reside remains exempt from tax. So any appreciation in the value of the house where you're residing, which is your principal residence, when you sell it, doesn't matter at what point in time you sell it, any appreciation in that principal residence is not subject to tax. So the proposal is not to eliminate that principal residence exemption, it's just to limit access to that exemption in case where the properties are being purchased for more of a speculation purposes than being able to live there. So this proposal would essentially eliminate that exemption if property was purchased and sold within a year. So it's essentially aiming to discourage speculation on residential properties. And another proposal which we have seen some traction is again limiting the access to home equity line of credit with respect to the down payment for an investment property. There have been some concerns that with the rising appreciation in the real estate values, a lot of Canadians have significant room in their home equity line of credit, and government was concerned that that may be increasing speculation in the real estate sector, and by limiting access to that home equity line of credit for the purchase of an investment property, they are expecting that there might be a bit of impact on this problem, which they perceive to be with respect to Canadian not able to afford their first-time home. So these are some of the measures we are expecting in 2022 budget. We have not seen, obviously we have not seen the budget. It's still not, and we don't have the timeline for this. But should things change, we will be releasing an up-to-date commentary on that budget. You can always access our various publications, including our annual commentary on the federal budget, on our websites, www.zeifmans.ca. After this presentation, I will also be available to take any questions you might have. Please feel free to reach out to us, and I'm going to be around for a little bit to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much for attending this presentation. I'm looking forward to be in touch with you if you have any questions or concerns regarding the content of the presentation today, or if you have any other questions with respect to with your businesses or your tax compliance strategies and tax planning questions. We are you can access Zeifmans social media feed through our Instagram, through our Twitter page, and also on our website. Thank you so much. Bye. How was it?
Wow. Thanks, Ahmad.
That was good. I will
Fantastic.
edit it and then send it to what's her face, Jessica.
Some mistakes in there.
It's okay. So, guys,
I mean,
listen
last
up.
time I think this is.
Listen up, Jess. Hey, Jess.
Stop recording.
Jess. Hey, Jess.
Uh,
You're not on mute. Okay, so here we go. Ahmad, hello. Where are you? Where are my screens here? 1 second, please. So, folks, we have Ahmad with us right now. I'm going to.
Hi.
Hi, Ahmad. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We're just waiting to see if there are any questions that have come in. One of the questions I had, a lot of our guests here are realtors, and what I wanted to ask you is, I mean, there's a lot of information packed in there. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, if they've got first-time home buyers in their prospect list, what is the one takeaway that they can provide information-wise and knowledge-wise? The single most important thing that might have changed for first-time home buyers?
So I think there are a couple of changes. One, we know that there is already a plan in place where you can access your RSP contribution in the past to come up with a down payment. The second change is this new tax account, which you should definitely be making use of it. We are expecting this to be launched shortly. And this allows you to again have start saving for your down payment and have that money grow tax free and be accessed on tax free basis. So there are some measures we are seeing government is trying to make it easier for Canadians to come up with that initial down payment. We know that the real estate prices have been appreciating quite a bit, but and also I think there are some measures which we still have to see the budget when it's released, but around the access to the relatively cheaper mortgage rate, which the government announced in the prior budget, where you can actually participate with the government in terms of the to come up with the initial funding, and then at the end of the day they essentially behave like a partner in that transaction, and so that allows people who don't have the initial funding available to participate.
Excellent. So folks, one of the things that Zeifmans is really good at is publishing findings, knowledge, information, wisdom on their social media. I follow them on LinkedIn, and I find that there's an enormous amount of really good quality content there. So for those of you who are in real estate and who are looking to be more competitive, the information you can get from Zeifmans can add another arrow in your quiver there to be able to outcompete those who don't pay quite as much attention in the marketplace. Okay. Sorry, we have another question here, Ahmad. Is the non-residential tax 1% annual for federal tax and 15% for provincial tax? Both to be paid?
Yeah, so they're both tax, unfortunately, in certain situations may be paid at the same, like on the same property, but they are aiming to do something different. The provincial 15% tax is a one-time tax. It's not an annual. It's a one-time tax at the time of the purchase, only in a certain geographic region in Ontario, and only if the property is essentially purchased by a non-resident. So if you're buying a property outside of that geographic region, you're not subject to 15% tax. The 1% tax, the federal 1% tax is a vacancy tax, essentially. So if a non-resident is buying a property but using that property, that tax is not applicable. That tax is really trying to encourage a productive use of the vacant property. So even though in certain situations they might be applicable to the same property, but they are trying to achieve two different objectives.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Ahmad, thank you very much. Once again, on behalf of Kurchma Surveyors, Protect Your Boundaries, LandPRO Conference, me, thank you for your support of the conference. It's invaluable to us, and thank you for doing this today as well. I know there's a ton of great information that we've been able to share. So folks, you have Ahmad's contact information. You can go and visit on Zeifmans if you want. And at this point, we are going to mute Ahmad. I'm going to do that if I may. There we go. And I'm going to kick off our City of Vaughan presentation. And from Vaughan, we have, let's see, we have Rafael Costa, which is terrific. And let me share my screen. I know I'm looking all over the place again. Let me share my screen and away we go. We'll see you in about 15 minutes, okay?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Rafael Costa. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Vaughan. On behalf of administration and council and our mayor, I'd like to thank LandPRO for this opportunity to share the opportunities in Vaughan and to demonstrate that Vaughan is an ambitious and transformative destination of choice. That our business community is purpose-driven, and that there are both current and future opportunities for investment in the city. What we're going to do for the next 10, 15 minutes or so, I want to run through 3 sections with you. First and foremost, I want to demonstrate the services that our Economic Development Department can provide. Really want to demonstrate again that we are here to help, and there are various ways that we can do that. I want to talk a little bit about why Vaughan, just give everyone a bit of a level set to remind you not only where Vaughan is, but some of the locational, demographic and industrial advantages of Vaughan. And also want to talk again at the end about some of the current opportunities, some of the policy updates that are underway in the city of Vaughan to help facilitate investment, and then to identify some of the major projects that some of your investors can work around. First, and this won't surprise a lot of the stakeholders on the call today who've worked with other economic development departments, our economic development department is certainly here to help you. We help in a number of ways. What I would start by saying is I encourage everyone to reach out at vaughanbusiness.ca and connect with one of our economic development officers. We are always happy to field questions, and we're always happy to try to connect you with the right answers as well. But to talk a little bit more specifically, we can offer services in a number of ways. I think first, as you and your investors require that business, economic, real estate, and demographic information about the city of Vaughan, certainly happy to help you with that. I do know that as part of our participation with LandPRO, we have actually provided a number of sector profiles and a number of pieces that you can go ahead and share with your clients. We also offer through our economic development officers highly customized end-to-end site selection assistance. So please do reach out to us if you or a client have specific needs about a site. I'm very happy to help work through the available sites in Vaughan with you. We can also provide zoning, planning, and bylaw information. Our zoning, planning, bylaw people are extraordinarily good, extraordinarily customer service driven. And we as economic developers are certainly there to help you connect with those people. And then more of a sort of a self-serve option. We do have a vacant employment land directory that's available on vaughanbusiness.ca. And we encourage you, if you just want to get a sense of some of the opportunities available in Vaughan, to take a look there and really identify specific sites. I want to turn now a little bit to why Vaughan and provide you with a bit of a context as to, again, why Vaughan is ambitious, transformative, and purpose-driven. First, we have a prime location. We have access to highways, an extended Highway 427, which provides the backbone to the Vaughan Enterprise Zone, which is our largest supply of industrial commercial land. We are connected across Highway 407 on the southern end of Vaughan, and of course Highway 400, as well as major roads like Highway 7, Highway 27, and others. We are, of course, very close to Pearson International Airport. If you're looking at the enterprise zone, for example, you can be in that key industrial and commercial zone from Pearson Airport in 15 to 20 minutes. We also have a strong logistics profile as well, and that's really backed not only by those roads that I mentioned before, but also by CP and CN major yards. So we do have the CN rallying yard in Vaughan, and we have the CP integral as well. Vaughan's economy is robust. It is one of the strongest in the GTA, and it is the largest in Europe region. Vaughan's economy produces more than $22 billion, almost $23 billion in 2020, and that accounts for nearly 40% of York region's output. When you look at things like building permits, in 2021, we issued nearly $1.9 billion in building permits, and roughly a little less than half of that was in the industrial and commercial areas as well. Vaughan's businesses are robust and diverse. We have 19,000 businesses who employ nearly 220,000 people. And we've had an annual economic growth rate over the last 10 years of more than 3%. And that includes the downturns caused by COVID-19. As I mentioned, we have a diverse economy. Of particular interest to you and your investors is that almost regardless of the kind of investment we're looking at in the city of Vaughan, there is a cluster that investment can key into. That said, of course, there are larger clusters in Vaughan. Some of those larger clusters are around finance, insurance, real estate, are around advanced manufacturing, supply chain logistics, and construction. That said, though, we have within manufacturing very, very strong automotive, food, and various other clusters. And if you're interested in sort of diving down into this, again, LandPRO has been provided with a series of sector profiles, but you can reach out to any of our economic development officers or myself, and we're happy to get that to you as well. Vaughan is also connected to talent, and the next couple of slides, I think, will really talk about this. So within a 1 hour drive, obviously blessed to be in the GTA and within striking distance of larger centers to the north, like Barrie. There are nearly 4 million workers within that 1 hour radius of the city of Vaughan. If you look just to the city of Vaughan, nearly 70% of our population, of our residents, have post-secondary accreditation. We have, within striking distance, nearly 50 post-secondary institutions who train nearly 300,000 students. In addition, right here in the city of Vaughan, we have Niagara University with strong programs in business, hospitality, and others. And finally, as well, and I think this really speaks to the kind of life in Vaughan, there's a variety of diverse languages in the city of Vaughan as well. This image is really a talent pipeline, which goes right along the formerly known as University Spadina TTC line, currently line 2, which connects Vaughan through the Vaughan Metropolitan Center, all the way from the Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital in the north, down to Union Station and Ryerson University on the other side. So some of the assets along there would be everything from OCAD to University of Toronto to George Brown College to York University. So there really is a really, really strong access to talent along that pipeline. And look, I mean, life here is good in Vaughan. In our last citizen satisfaction survey, 97% of our citizens said that they were satisfied or more than satisfied. There are a variety of recreational and cultural amenities in the city of Vaughan, whether it's our North Maple Regional Park, which is larger than Central Park in New York, whether it's our more than 500 city-owned recreational assets, whether it's our parks, whether it's our walking trails. We do have vibrant quality of life in the city of Vaughan. And again, we are a very multicultural city as well. Nearly half of our population, in fact, are foreign born. Now, turning to Vaughan itself and some of the current opportunities. Here we have a map just kind of overlaying Vaughan and some of the key development areas. And again, happy to provide this to anybody who wants to reach out to us after the presentation. But I think what is important to understand here is that Vaughan, like many cities in the GTA, are growing rapidly. We expect to grow from the roughly 325,000 people we have today to about 500,000 by 2041, which means, of course, that we have to look at various densification nodes. We have highlighted in red on the map our Young Steels densification, our 7 and Weston densification, as well as sort of areas north along Highway 400. And to really support that, we've been looking at various policy updates to really facilitate that intensification and that investment. So recently there has been a new citywide comprehensive zoning bylaw. We are undertaking both Vaughan and York Region municipal and official plan reviews. And there are a number of secondary plan areas identified in Vaughan, which are moving through our pipeline. In terms of a quick market snapshot on office and industrial, grab some stats from Q4 of 2021 for you to have a look at. We're identifying total inventories of more than 5 million square feet in office and more than or almost 96 million in terms of industrial. The availability rate, as you can see, is certainly interesting. On office, we're hovering around 10%. In industrial, we continue to be in demand, and we have a less than 1% availability rate. Our weighted average is certainly competitive with GTA markets. And you can see as well average sale prices and the amount under construction. So particularly on the industrial, yes, we have a very low availability rate, but there is space coming online. In terms of building permits, wanted to highlight last year alone, the City of Vaughan issued nearly $1.9 billion in building permits. Of those 1.9 billion, almost half was in industrial and commercial. So you can see that we ranked 6th nationally in commercial development by the value of permits. We ranked 8th nationally in industrial development by the value of permits, and 9th overall in terms of non-residential development. And this is really backed by some major projects in which investments can kind of cluster around. Obviously, we have our downtown Vaughan. We have a Vaughan Healthcare Center Precinct, which is adjacent to the Cordalucci Vaughan Hospital at 400 and Major Mackenzie, the Yonge North Subway extension, and the 427 extension through the Vaughan Enterprise Zone as well. When you look at the VMC, it is the largest and most ambitious project in Vaughan's history. We had a population target of 25,000 residents and 11,500 jobs by 2031. And as you can see, we are well past those estimates. 288% of residential units, 274% of our population target, more than double the office jobs, and we're at 77%, percent of our retail target. In terms of the Yonge Street corridor, we're all aware of the recent announcements and projects around the Yonge subway extension, and here is the proposed line. It is targeted for completion around 2029, 2030, which will have 2 stations in Vaughan, and we are working very hard to try to prepare the Yonge Steels Center as the next big opportunity. Our Vaughan Healthcare Center Precinct is a roughly $1.8 billion project. The hospital, Cordalucci Vaughan Hospital, has opened recently, and there are significant opportunities, particularly around the health and healthcare industry here. York University, as we are all aware, is working on a School of Medicine proposal and potential expansion. Mackenzie Health and Cordalucci Vaughan Hospital are looking to expand at the site as well. And we are working with our Regional Innovation Center Venture Lab to really provide those commercialization investment opportunities into the area. And finally, the Vaughan Enterprise Zone. This is located in the western quadrant of the city. It borders Brampton. It has a total gross area of nearly 1,700 hectares. This particular area, again, is really backboned by the 427 extension. It is 15 to 20 minutes away from Pearson International Airport. and really has a robust and very attractive industrial and commercial value proposition. To give you a sense of the kind of things that are going on in the enterprise zone, we've listed a number of the key projects ongoing right now. And again, if you reach out to us, we're more than happy to connect you with some of the key players for these projects and to provide information. With that, I'd like to close and thank you very much for your time. Again, my name is Rafael Costa. I'm the Director of Economic Development in the Office of Communications and Economic Development at the City of Vaughan. My email is here, and vaughanbusiness.ca is the best source of information for us at the City of Vaughan. With that, thank you, and I look forward to engaging with you all in the future. Thanks.
Rafael, thank you so much. I know you're here with us on the stream, and yeah, you're unmuted and you're videoed now, which is great. Thank you for that presentation. Ton of amazing information in there. A lot more to digest than we can possibly do in 15 minutes. But if anyone has any questions they want to ask of Rafael, please go ahead and do so. The reason why I love doing this is because I get to ask a question. So that's why I enjoy it. So Rafael, question from me. Obviously the pandemic threw everyone into a tailspin, regardless of what you did for a living or where you worked or what company you ran. It threw everyone into a tailspin. Can you summarize for us what the biggest effects were on Vaughan and what you see in the next 12 months as recovery?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We've got two parts there. So biggest effects and then in terms of recovery. So, I think in terms of the biggest effects on Vaughan, one thing that we were really blessed by was that we have a leadership and a council and a mayor who was prepared for this and who was quick to act. So as many of you know, pandemic is declared essentially March 11th, March 12th, March 17th, we were in front of council with the Vaughan Business Action Plan, which supported a number of reliefs for businesses. And then sort of through that, we were able to transition to continue to push the city building continues in spite of the pandemic. So throughout the pandemic, I mean, look, last year alone, as I mentioned in the presentation, $1.8 billion in building permits. We continue to be a place in demand. And I know I mentioned as well sort of the business makeup of Vaughan. Obviously, when you look at the pandemic from a macroeconomic point of view for the city of Vaughan, our GDP went from roughly 24 billion in 2019 to about almost 22 and change in 2020. We're still waiting for our 2021 numbers, but we were projected to rebound faster than the rest of York region. And frankly, we do expect that. In spite of the pandemic, our business count went from 19,155 to about, or 19,100 and change to just shy of 19,000. So I don't think we were blessed to sort of avoid maybe some of the worst shocks of the pandemic. That said, we were not immune, of course. Retail was heavily affected. Tourism industry was heavily affected as well. In terms of how we're planning to rebound and really build resilience into the community, after the Vaughan Business Action Plan, we did, as a city, pass the Vaughan Business Resilience Plan in June of 2020 to set us up in a short, medium, and long-term way. With a series of programs and a series of initiatives to really push the economic recovery. And our most recent announcement and our most recent program there was actually the announcement of an Advantage Vaughan program just this past month. And what Advantage Vaughan does, it will continue to support small businesses but it will also support our talent. So, one thing we are really proud of, and I know we discussed this in the presentation, is the talent pipeline that we have in Vaughan. It is the ambitious, transformative, diverse group of people we have living in Vaughan. So what we're looking to do with that is increase that micro-credentialing, that upskilling ability here in the city of Vaughan, and really working to get sort of our educational partners working directly with our business community. So looking to, again, not just focus on the pure business point of view, but also the talent as well.
Awesome. Raphael, thank you so much, and thank you for your support at LandPRO. Folks, whether you're a developer, a residential realtor, a commercial realtor, if you have any interest in Vaughan, this is the person you contact if you need to find out where to go, who to speak to, what to do. Raphael, thanks again. And with that, we will stop sharing your video there, and we will move over to our good friends at Geo Warehouse. Let me share this screen if I may. 1 second. And from Geo Warehouse, we have with us John Singh and Teresa Corindia, good friends of ours, the folks at Geo Warehouse. As many of you know, many of our products that protect your boundaries are actually embedded in Geo Warehouse through our partnership. So we work very closely with these great folks. And with that, let me begin the presentation. We'll see you in about 10-15 minutes.
GeoWarehouse is a web-based centralized property information source that provides state-of-the-art mapping and research tools, as well as professional reports. GeoWarehouse services real estate and land professionals across Ontario. In this session, we're going to learn how to search using the map, how to adjust the map view to obtain a better view of the property, how to request the property report to confirm ownership information and property details, how to access title documents such as the parcel register, plan, and instrument images, and finally, how to search for comparables. When you log into GeoWarehouse, you'll notice that at the top of the window, there is an Omni Search bar, and this allows you to search by address, by the name of the owner, by the PIN, the property identification number, which is the unique identifier from Land Registry, ARN, which stands for Assessment Roll Number, instrument or plans, which are statutory documents. You'll also notice that there's a drop down to the right of all. And another option you can search by is by lot and concession. Now, if information is not known about the property, you can also use the map search to adjust the map to the area of interest and to choose the property from the map window. To search using the map, you adjust the map window using the tools available on your device. I'm using a computer with a mouse, but you might be using a trackpad, or perhaps you're using a tablet where you use your finger or stylus. Simply go to the area that you're interested in and zoom in close to the area of interest. Once you get in and around the area that you're interested in, there are some map tools that are available that will help you to review the property to ensure that you selected the property that you're interested in. You'll notice in the top right of the window, there's a number of different icons. And the two tools that I use primarily are the map layers. And if I choose that icon, you'll notice it's going to expand and tell me what the legend is for the different map lines. Green represents ownership. If I choose the third icon that looks like a flag, that is the map view option. And it allows me to change my map view to two different options. The default is standard road map view. If I wanted to take a look at the area using aerial view, I can choose the second option, and this will bring up aerial imagery from Google. Google has two different options. They have the bird's eye view if the checkbox is here, or if I remove that, it will show me just the standard aerial imagery from Google. And depending on area, it looks like there's only the standard aerial imagery in this area, but sometimes there may be more than one option. The third option that's available is the enhanced aerial. And if I choose that, that comes from a company called FirstTime Solutions. And one thing that I love about this aerial imagery is that time of year where leaves are not on tree, which it's quite lovely to see, you know, the bottom corner of this lot where there's a number of trees. But if there are other buildings or anything underneath the trees, it's difficult to see. And by choosing the enhanced aerial, you get a different view of the property so that you can do a visual scan and review to see if this is the property that you're interested in knowing some more information about. To choose the property from the map window, you can take your mouse, if that's what you're using, your trackpad, and click on the left side. Or if you're using a tablet, just touch the screen on top of the property and an information window will open. From this window, there's two different options. You can choose Street View or Property Report. If you choose Street View, it's going to open up Google Street View imagery where you can review and take a look at the property from the Street View imagery that's available. To return to the property on the map window, you can choose the arrow that points towards the left in the top left corner of the window. To request the property report, choose Property Report. And it's going to open up with the GeoWarehouse Property Report where you can validate information with regard to this property. The overview will tell me who the owner of the property is, as well as the date in which they made the purchase. There is a section that will tell me the area and perimeter of the lot, as well as the complete legal description in this section. The next topic is property details, and I find the navigation within this report, the easiest way to move through topics is to choose it within the gray banner. The property details has Google Street View imagery and information about the property, including the 9-digit PIN. You'll notice on the right that there's an image where you can purchase a copy of the parcel register. If you choose this image, it's going to open up to the GeoWarehouse e-store where you can purchase an official Ontario record of ownership. And this is going to tell you about all encumbrances that are registered against the property. Are there any mortgages? Are there any liens? Anything that affects the equity or perhaps the land use of the property? And this is, again, the official record from Land Registry. You can include deleted instruments if you want to find historical information and you put the checkbox here, or if you would like to just obtain information on current status of the property, you can just choose quick checkout or add product to cart to purchase a copy of that record. The next section is Site and Structure. The Site and Structure section has aerial imagery as well as map view imagery. It will tell me the area and perimeter of the lot, as well as give me a measurement for every angle of the property. And this one actually has a number of angles because it looks like there may have been changes through the history of this property. You'll also notice that the area, I'm going to make note of the lot size. I can remember that for when I do my comparable search in a little bit. Now, another feature that I really love, and it's one of my favorite tips and tricks in GeoWarehouse, is the manual measurement tool. How I can access that is I choose the square with the 4 arrows that point out. You'll notice that when I zoom into the map window, I can do some manual measurements of any attribute within the property. I simply choose measure in the top left corner of the window, and then I can place points on the map. So if I wanted to know the width or the depth of the lots, I can place one point at one end of the lot, one point at the other, and I'd be able to measure that out. So you'll see that it has the distance in the very bottom of the window, as well as it's placed a point on the map right here. To close out of this section, I can choose the squares that point in, and it closes me out. Valuation and sales section will show me the complete sales history of the property since the records were automated or since the PIN was created. Plan surveys and easement section will tell me if there are any plans that are deposited in Land Registry or registered plans that are available for purchase. I can actually see that there are 3 different plans that affect this property. You'll notice if I choose them, it's going to identify on the map window which properties will be referenced within that plan itself. So that could help me with deciding which plan would be important to purchase if I needed to dig a little bit deeper to find out some more information. Now, within this section, we also have an easement indicator, and this comes from our partner, Protect Your Boundaries, where it's going to tell you if there may be an easement that's detected on this property. Now, whenever you see that there may be an easement on a property, if you feel comfortable, you can dig in yourself and you could purchase the parcel register. There's another link to it right here, or you could also take a look at the plan documents, or you can take a look at any instrument that may be referenced within the legal description. In this case, when I take a look at the legal description, I can see that this property is ST, which oftentimes stands for subject to this document that's listed right here. If I wanted to get a copy of an instrument image, I need to know the instrument number, and then I can paste it into my search bar and click on search, and then it will identify if it's registered against any property. To purchase an instrument image, I just click on view details, and I would be able to purchase a copy of that document for $3 per image. The one thing about looking at statutory documents such as the parcel register, plan images, or instrument images is you need to interpret the information and understand how it truly affects the property whenever you're looking at easements. And I actually prefer to get the Protect Your Boundary easement report. And the reason why I like to do this is because when you choose to purchase this report, it's going to be put together by a researcher that has the experience in analyzing and explaining what the easement is and how it affects the title. Whenever you purchase this report that comes from Protect Your Boundaries, it's going to include a copy of the parcel register as well as a copy of the easement documents. And it's going to be written in plain English, so it'll help me interpret what it actually represents when it talks about the easement. You can make your choice about how you would like to access that information, whether you would like to pull the title documents yourself to review it or choose the Protect Your Boundary report. In any event, either option is available to you through the GeoWarehouse property report. The final topic that we're going to explore in this session is how to find comparable sales. When you've selected a property of interest, you can search for properties that have sold in the area of the subject property by choosing comparables in the gray banner. A search criteria window will open where you may define the area using a radius or polygon. The radius, if you choose the drop down, you can choose the size of the radius. When you make this choice, that may be a little bit bigger or smaller than the area that you're interested in. And you can resize the radius using the resize option to make it as big or small as you like. Another option is the polygon draw feature, where you may draw a very specific polygon around the area where you feel those comparable properties are. And the thing I love about polygon is you can do any shape or size that you like to capture the area where the comparable properties may be located. You may define the criteria by the time frame in which property is sold and choose from preset options, or you can choose your own custom time frame. You can define the property type using Land Registry property type. Land Registry property type is defined as freehold, condo, road, or railroad. For this property, I choose freehold. You can define the price amount by moving a toggle left or right, choosing the drop down, or typing in the amount. Lot size is really important to use whenever it comes to larger size lots. This feature is only available for freehold, but when I'm looking at a property that is a large lot, similar to this one, where it's 90 acres, I usually use the drop down so I can define the lot size. Now you'll notice that there are options available in the drop-down to choose for the lot size. Unfortunately, you're not able to type that amount into the window. That's a feature I'd love to see enhanced in the future. So typically what I would do is I'd choose that I want to search for properties that are a minimum of 25 acres in size, and they are run to 100 plus acres, because I want to find properties that are slightly smaller than 90 acres and slightly larger than 100 acres, so that I can find the properties that may be comparable. Once I've finished setting my criteria, I can choose Find Comparables. Results will appear on the map window as well as in a list, and I can continue to refine my search by adjusting the parameters that I've set. And then I can choose the refresh option to continue to update information until I have a list of properties that I feel are comparable to my subject. And if I want to remove any of the properties based on lot size, I might choose lot size to remove the smaller lot, or I might choose lot size again to identify those lots that are much larger than my subject, until I come up with a list of properties that I feel are comparable. And then I can generate a printed or a PDF report of the properties. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about GeoWarehouse and how it may help you in your business. If you are a land professional, such as an architect, builder, developer, engineer, or property manager, and subscribe to GeoWarehouse, you may have a specific need that GeoWarehouse may solve, but need help with the workflow. Please reach out to me and we can set up a training session. If you would like to learn more about how to subscribe to GeoWarehouse, please contact John Singh for more information.
Fantastic. Teresa, thank you so much. You're so good at that. I love how far GeoWarehouse has come. When is all this functionality going to get fully transitioned into the Realm system that Treb has?
Oh, that's a great question. It actually, a lot of the functionality already is in Realm today. That's available. So all of the land registry information is there for realtors that are members of the Toronto Real Estate Board right now.
Okay, fantastic. And we have a question here. Is there a cost to use GeoWarehouse? I think the simple answer is yes, right?
So Teresa, I'll take that question. So the answer is yes, there is a cost to use GeoWarehouse. And currently the list price is $3,675 per user annually.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yep.
So, okay, guys, we are a little over time here. So we need to move on with the final presentation. But I do want to, before we do that, say thank you so much for your support of our conference and all the great things you do on GeoWarehouse, and also the partnership we have with products and all those other great things that we do together. So thank you for being with us today. Much appreciated. Great presentation. And we will be in touch real soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so moving on, one final presentation. And just to make sure that I completely torture you today, you're going to get to see a presentation that I've done on who owns that tree. And this is everything you ever needed to know in a very short period of time on trees, on boundaries in residential areas. And for me, this is a fascinating topic because I'm always amazed when people go and plant little tiny oak saplings right on the boundary. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Really? Do you think it's going to stay just on your side, 2 inches in on your side? No, usually it's going to grow into something huge. But the question remains, how on earth do I know if this tree is a boundary tree, if it's encroaching, if it's not? And so this presentation is designed to walk you through some of that. So let me share the screen for the last time today for you. Here we go. And we'll see you in a little bit after this, okay?
Who owns that tree? Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to sort of focus in on 4 specific problems, 4 examples that demonstrate the kind of issues that we hear about or protect your boundaries all the time. Then we're going to talk about when is a tree a boundary tree. And boundary tree is a term that I want you to get familiar with. And through this you will, and you'll understand how it's defined. We're then going to talk about who's responsible for either maintaining the tree, damage caused by the tree, removing the tree, all of those things. Then we're going to talk about resolving tree disputes. How do we go about resolving tree disputes, and how are tree disputes resolved? So let's take a look now. Let's get started. Let's go through a few examples. There's some amazing pictures on the internet, right? Here's a tree. here's a tree. And let's assume in these examples that the fence is actually the property line. Let's just make that assumption, okay? The fence is just showing us where the property line is. So here's a tree that was planted on the other side of the boundary and clearly is now growing, has branches, fairly significant branches growing over the boundary onto this side. So that's the kind of issue, some of those issues are what we hear about all the time, trees and branches over the property line. Here's another one. Again, assume that the fence is the property line here. This is part of the tree trunk over the property line. This thing has grown. It amazes me. Doesn't it amaze you when people plant a line of maple trees, little tiny maple saplings or oak saplings, just a couple of inches in on their property line? Well, what do you think is going to happen, right? It's not going to stay that size. Of course, it's going to end up encroaching, and you'll see the implication of that a little later. Well, here's one that we see all the time, particularly in dense urban areas where people start putting down interlocking, they put down patios, that kinds of thing. And that is a tree that could be quite far away, several feet or meters away. Its roots are heaving the patio stones. What do you do in that situation? Especially if it's a tree on somebody else's property that's heaving your patio or your retaining wall. And of course, the retaining wall, this is a bit of an extreme example, but we see this all the time. Tree roots heaving or cracking or tilting retaining walls. And those of you who were with us last week will remember all the rules and regulations and everything else we talked about with retaining walls. So these are the kind of situations we see all the time, questions that we're getting all the time, and we know you do as well. So hopefully we're going to arm you with some information, some knowledge, some process, so that you can answer these questions when they come up with your clients. So let's just recap these. The tree is on the boundary. Some of the kinds of issues that we see. The tree is on the boundary. One neighbor wants to remove it. The other one doesn't. What do you do? Right? You're the neighbor. You want it removed. The other side doesn't want. Your neighbor doesn't want it removed. How do you resolve this? A neighbor's tree roots are interfering with my patio, my wall, my fence, my pool, my grass, whatever the case may be. But it's a neighbor's tree whose roots or branches are interfering with some aspect of my property. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who was saying their neighbor's tree has grown so large that its branches now actually rest on his roof, and the squirrels are running around and the animals are getting up onto his roof and all over the roof, and it's causing it's mayhem for him. So he wants to cut those branches down. The question is he allowed to? Can he? What happens if he does? Does he need permission? All those things. That's number 3. And finally, I've got a tree on my property. Can I just cut it down? And you might think that, you know what, if I have a shed on my property or a patio or a deck or anything else on my property, I can just do what I want with it. But guys, when it comes to trees, you can't. You cannot just remove a tree. You can plant a tree, but you can't just remove a tree. We'll get into that as well. So let's talk about trees, and specifically the anatomy of a boundary tree. I want you guys to get really familiar with the term boundary tree, because when you're speaking with a client and they say, I've got a tree, an issue, neighbor's tree, you're going to be thinking to yourself, is it a boundary tree or is it not a boundary tree? Because that is a key distinction that determines the potential course of action, that determines the rules, the bylaws, the legislation, the guidances, the extent to which the municipality will get involved, and how you are going to be able to advise your client. Is it a boundary tree or is it not a boundary tree? So I'm going to get rid of my little video here right now so we can see this full screen. Okay, here we go. So is it a boundary? Is it a boundary, the anatomy of a boundary tree? This is called the branch collar. We're looking at the tree trunk, and we're looking at the point at which the branch that's closest to the offending branch, let's call it, the branch that's maybe closest to the boundary, the point at which it comes off the trunk. That's called the branch collar. And the branch collar line is the bottom of that. So it's almost like the armpit, that's for want of a better term, of that particular branch. That's the branch collar line, okay? So that's an important term. And on this diagram, that's kind of where it might be. That's your branch collar line. You got that? Same thing at the other end. There's the bottom of the tree, and there's something called the root collar line. And the root collar line is the line around the tree where the roots, the main roots, attach to or come off the main trunk. Got it? Now, when we're talking about this, it isn't one line necessarily. For the purpose of what we're dealing with, it's not just one line that goes all the way around. It's the point at which the route that is the offending route, right? The route closest to the boundary, it's where it attaches to the tree trunk. Same with the branch color line. It's where the branch that we're talking about being closest to the boundary or hanging over the boundary. It's where that attaches. So there's our root collar line. Okay, there's a gap there. There's the gap. Now in this case, we're saying that there is where the little red dot is. We're saying that there is the boundaries on that side, and therefore that's the root collar line that we're going to deal with over there. Now, if we look at the space between the branch collar line and the root collar line, that's the key space that you are looking for. And that space is known as the trunk. Okay, that is the trunk. Now, in more casual terms, colloquial terms, or casually, we're going to say the trunk is, well, there's no real definition. It's the part of the tree that stands up, right? But in this particular case, when we're talking about a boundary tree, the trunk is very clearly defined. And an arborist can come in and give you very specific points at which the trunk starts and finishes. So if any part of this part of the tree, the trunk, is over the boundary, it is considered a boundary tree. If any part of the trunk, as defined here between the branch collar line and the root collar line, if any part of that is over the boundary, it is considered a boundary tree. What does that mean? Well, it means that ownership and responsibility are shared equally. Guys, this is critical. Even if a centimeter of the collar line, a centimeter of the root collar is over the boundary, it is considered shared, the ownership is considered shared, and the responsibility is considered shared. So if you go and plant a maple tree 2 feet in on your property, and 25 years later, part of the root collar is over on the neighbor's property, even by a centimeter, that is no longer your tree that you can do whatever you want with. It is something that is now jointly owned and both of you have equal responsibility. So just to reiterate, if any part of the trunk is over the boundary, it's a boundary tree. Ownership and responsibility are shared equally. If none of the trunk is over the boundary, it is not a boundary tree. It's just a privately owned tree. And ownership and responsibility rest with the property owner whose property the whole trunk is on, regardless of where the canopy is and regardless of where the roots go. Okay, that's a really important definition for you to get your arms around. Now, who are the experts that are going to help you with all this stuff? Well, you and your neighbor, or your client and their neighbor, can go out and they can start talking to, they can start looking at the tree and poking around and trying to figure out exactly where the root collar is, and having arguments about where the root collar and where the branch collar are. But an arborist will tell you exactly where those are on the boundary side that you're interested in. And if you do get an arborist involved, have them actually mark it on the ground or on the tree. Now, something that I didn't realize is that root collar that we're talking about that comes off the main trunk, that can sometimes be underground. It doesn't have to be above ground. Key point here. So you might have a root that is heaving your neighbor's patio, and the root collar that attaches, you can say, well, no, the tree's over here. It's nowhere near. It's a foot in on my property. It's nowhere near the property line. The root collar underneath may be, though, and it may be underground. It doesn't have to be overground. So the arborist will examine it and tell you exactly where the root collar is. The surveyor will tell you where the boundary is. And if the arborist has marked where the root collar is, the surveyor will be able to show that on a survey plan for you, so you can see exactly where that is relative to the boundary. And finally, the municipality is going to dictate your process and permit requirements relative to all of this great stuff. Okay, and we're going to get into that a bit as well. So this is the first piece that you really need to get your head around: is how do we define a boundary tree? How do we determine whether a tree is on the boundary or not, or over the boundary? And what does that mean in terms of ownership and responsibility? Next, whose tree is it? Wow, this is going to get good. All right, are you ready? Here's our tree again. There's you on the right-hand side. There's your neighbor on the left-hand side. And this is the kind of arguments people get into, right? There's the branch collar line. And there is the root collar line. You're familiar with all this now, right? So what if, so we're gonna ask ourselves, we've got a dispute between the two neighbors. Somebody's saying, oh, your tree is on my property, the roots heaving, whatever the case may be. One day you're saying, I would remove the tree, it's all on my side. The neighbor's saying, oh, no, you can't do that, it's partly my tree. And basically what you're trying to determine is who owns the tree. We first have to determine where the branch collar line and where the root collar line are, which we've done. And then we have to ask ourselves, where is the boundary? So if the boundary is in position 1, remember the boundary is a plane that goes up and down. It isn't just a line on the ground. But if the boundary is in position 1, clearly, if you look at where the root collar line is and the branch collar line, no part of the trunk of this tree is on the neighboring property. So this is entirely your tree. It's your tree. You are responsible for it. You can do whatever you want without your neighbor's permission, obviously within the law, within the bylaws of your municipality. It's your tree. Number 2, okay, now it gets interesting. Number 2, if the boundary is in position 2, look at the top blue circle there, and you can see that the boundary, that the tree collar line, the branch collar line is just over on your side. It shows that the trunk is still over on your side of the property line. However, if you look at the root collar line, you can see that there is a very, very small portion, just a couple of inches of trunk that's on the neighboring property. What does that mean? Well, that means that this tree is shared. It can be the most minuscule amount. This tree is now shared between you and your neighbor, as if the boundary was in position 3, where the boundary goes right down the middle of the tree. This is such an important point, guys. And listen, if it's 99% on your side and 1% on the neighbor's side, it is still completely shared, 50-50. It's completely shared. So something else people find unfair sometimes, but that's how it is. So shared tree. Position 4, same as position 2. The top of the trunk, where the branch collar line, well in on your neighbor's property. But at the bottom, there is a very, very small piece that is on your property, a piece of the trunk that is on your property. Do you see how important now it becomes for you and your neighbor not to go out there and start poking around? You need to get an arborist in to actually tell you where this point is. And an arborist report will provide that. So this tree, although it appears to be entirely on your neighbor's property, is actually shared ownership because a tiny, tiny portion of the root of the trunk, as defined by the root collar line, is on your property. And finally, position 5, the entire trunk is on your neighbor's property. Therefore, it is their property. It is their tree and their responsibility. Make sense? It's not that difficult when you understand the definition of the trunk, right? First, understand how to define the trunk. Second, understand that if any portion of that trunk is on a property, somebody's property, they share equal rights, obligations, responsibilities as the other property owner for that tree. So, where does this all get defined? At the highest level, it gets defined at the Ontario Forestry Act. And it's the Ontario Forestry Act that defines what a boundary tree is. And most municipalities, if not all municipalities across Ontario, snap back to that in terms of when they need to figure out when they are getting involved, choose to get involved or whatever in a boundary issue involving a tree. Not only that, we've seen some court cases recently in the last few years go through where the judge has gone back to the Forestry Act to help figure out where the responsibility and ownership lies. And the Ontario Forestry Act, not only does it define what a boundary tree is, but it also dictates that you can't cut a boundary tree down unless both parties have consented. You cannot cut a boundary tree down without both parties consenting. Even if it's just a centimeter of the trunk that's on the neighbor's property, you cannot cut it down if they haven't provided written consent. And this is the case, even if the city has provided you with a permit to cut it down. you still have to get their consent to do so. Now, there are some situations, obviously we're speaking in generalities here. There are some situations where the municipality will get involved and all these kinds of things. But generally speaking, the Ontario Forestry Act says you cannot cut a boundary tree down unless both parties consent. And there was a fairly significant court case, which we're going to link to in the BoundaryWise Academy for you, that where somebody actually had a permit to remove a boundary tree from the municipality in the city of Toronto. They had the permit. They sat on the permit for 3 years for some reason. Then they cut the tree down. Well, the neighbor didn't want the tree down, hadn't provided consent. This went to court, and the judge ultimately ruled on the side of the person who, not the person who cut the tree down, who had the permit, but the other person, saying basically, you know what? You can't cut that down without the consent of the neighboring party. So it is messy. But basically, at the highest level, the Ontario Forestry Act, this is what it states. So boundary trees in the municipality, you've got the Ontario Forestry Act. Now you've got the bylaws, the rules and regulations at the municipal level. And every municipality in Ontario has a slightly different way of dealing with your desire to cut a tree down, deal with a boundary, deal with a boundary tree, deal with a private tree, remove it, resolve a dispute, and all of these things. So with private boundary trees, I'm saying private boundary trees because public boundary trees are a different thing. Private boundary trees are trees that are on the boundary between you and your neighbor, two parcels of private property. A public boundary tree is a boundary tree that is partly on your property and partly on public property. So that's dealt with differently in every municipality. Basically, don't touch it is the rule there. So private boundary trees, there are bylaws at the municipal level, bylaws that govern the removal of boundary trees, and those bylaws can include applications, permits, fees, inspections, and every municipality deals with them slightly differently. There's process to determine the status of ownership. And if you go to the city of Toronto, I was astonished, phenomenally detailed process. There are people who will come out from the city, bylaw officers who will come out with expertise in this to give you and your neighbor a determination on the ownership of a tree. It's fantastic service, right? Clearly, it's a big problem in Toronto. Most municipalities don't go that far, but every municipality will tell you, here's the process by which we want you to follow to determine the status of ownership. Some say, like Ottawa, says, it's a civil matter. Don't get us involved. It's a civil matter, unless it's a public tree that we're responsible for, in which case, watch out, don't touch it. Okay. And then there are rules that dictate how you deal with a dispute relating to boundary trees. And it's, again, in some cases, it's don't bother us. It's nothing to do with us. It's in other cases, it's go get a survey, go get an arborist report, bring your consent from your neighbor or not, and we'll tell you how you go about doing it. Oftentimes it's go get a lawyer, figure it out yourselves. Other times it's no, we have a process by which we can get involved. And with private trees, so these are trees. So up until now, we talked about boundary trees. With private trees, on the other hand, with private trees, which are trees that are wholly owned by you, there are still bylaws that govern what you can and cannot remove. Please do not allow your client to fall into the trap of thinking, this is no different from my shed. I can just take it down if I want. It's not. Ownership is trumped by the municipality's desire and mandate to protect the urban forest. And so the municipality will tell you exactly what you can and cannot cut down and why that is the case, and what the dimensions are, the diameters of trees, and what you have to replace them with, what sort of permits you have to get, what applications you have to put in, what sort of fees you have to pay. So there is process dictating how you get permission to do so at the municipal level. Got it? Not too complicated, right? It's just a lot of process to deal with. So tree removal across the province. Now, we've done a whole bunch of research to protect your boundaries, and we're putting all this up in the BoundaryWise Academy for our BoundaryWise accredited agents. But basically, if we just to give you a sense, if we look at Markham, Vaughan, Mississauga, Brampton, Hamilton, Kitchener, and Toronto as well, and many, many, many more, a permit is required to remove a boundary tree. You can't just remove it. It must have the neighbor's written consent. And each one, however, each municipality has a slightly different process. And that is key. Ottawa says it's a civil matter. If it's nothing to do with public property, if it's nothing to do with a tree that they have jurisdiction over, it's a civil matter. You have to follow the Forestry Act guidelines, except for if it's a tree that has a 50 centimeter diameter, in which case it's determined to be a distinctive tree, and then the municipality, the city of Ottawa, does get involved, and their bylaws and rules do have effect. So you can see how each municipality, based on the density of their population and the housing and everything else, and the nature of their urban forest, they have created a set of rules and regulations to provide the kind of protection that they feel is required to make sure people don't just start clear cutting the entire city. So if you want more on this stuff, join up on the BoundaryWise Academy. We'll be giving you a lot more of this kind of research on this side of things. Okay.
Okay, folks, fantastic. I actually learned something there. I'm losing my hair. That's what I learned there. Oh my goodness, that was quite something, watching myself do that presentation. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful for you. And let me stop sharing that screen. There we go. And now you can get the real me here. There we are. Perfect. So we did get a question here. If you have any questions, fire away. We do have a few more minutes here. But Kay Kennedy asked, does the branch collar line alone determine who owns the tree, or is it the root collar line determine, or does the root collar line determine responsibility? It's both. The branch collar line, it's a two-step process. First, you determine where the branch collar line is and where the root collar line is. That defines the trunk, which is the piece of the tree in between those two lines. If any part of that trunk is over the property line, then it becomes a boundary tree. So it's not one line or the other, but that's usually, it's not one line or the other, it's what's in between that counts. However, typically it's either a portion of the branch or a portion of the root that goes over. And so that's what we tend to focus on. One of the things that I don't think I got across quite clearly in that, and that is that your arborist is going to tell you where the root collar line is and the branch collar line is, right? But then a surveyor is going to tell you where the boundary is, right? It's those are the two professionals that will give you the information you need. Karen Wright said, how do you determine a branch collar with a birch? It's very tall. Yeah, and it also just splits out right away at the ground, right? I have no idea. What a good question. I'm going to dodge that one. Sorry, Karen. I'm going to defer to an arborist. Lan, thank you. Kingle Fan, thank you very much. Folks, please check us out at the BoundaryWise Academy. If this was useful to you, this particular presentation, head over to boundarywise.ca. That's one of our divisions that protect your boundaries. We also do LandPRO, but we have a full accreditation system for realtors on everything to do for land, everything to do with land, and yeah, very, very useful. Oh, Rosa, what a good question. What if you have raised the branch collar by cutting the lower branches? Wow. You have me stumped, you people, today. Come on, it's only Wednesday. You can't do this to me on a Wednesday. So my guess on this would be that if it's already been cut off and you didn't get into trouble for it, a lower branch, now it's the higher branch whose collar is the one that would calculate the trunk. That would be my guess. Again, an arborist would tell you for sure. Okay, folks, we're just about done here. Unless there are any more questions, I want to thank you all. All of you stayed. Fantastic. I want to thank you all very much for coming to LandPRO and supporting us there. I hope you got a lot out of it, and for showing up today. I hope this was useful for you today. And go out there, do great things, and let's enjoy a fantastic year. And hopefully next year we'll meet again at LandPRO, and we'll enjoy this year of what we suspect to be a little bit more freedom. So thank you all. Take care of yourselves, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.